Hi, in this section, we shall be looking at how to calculate incidence rates, how to calculate prevalence rates, how to calculate ratio, and how to calculate proportion using this hypothetical example. In a community of Mpo, the total population is 10,000. The men were 5,000, while the women were 5,000. During the survey, the findings shows that 150 new cases of tuberculosis was recorded, with 50 existing cases among the men. Also, from the findings, it was recorded that 100 new cases of tuberculosis and 30 existing cases were also found. Therefore, you are expected to calculate the attack rate of tuberculosis among men and among women. You also expected to calculate the incidence rate among men and among women. That is the incidence rate of tuberculosis. Then we are also expected to calculate the prevalence rate of tuberculosis among men and among women. Then calculate the ratio of tuberculosis in men in relation to women. And then finally, calculate the proportion of tuberculosis cases among men in the population. And look at the parameters we are working with. The total population is 10,000, with 5,000 being men and 5,000 being women. Then new cases of tuberculosis in men were 150, whereas new cases of tuberculosis was 100 in women, while existing cases of tuberculosis was 50 in men and 30 in women. Let's calculate attack rate. Attack rate is the proportion of a population that develops a specific disease during a specific time period, typically expressed in percentage. Attack rate helps us to know how far a disease is transmitted or spreading in a particular population. The attack rate is the proportion of population that develops a particular disease during a specific time period that is expressed in percentage. And the formula is attack rate equals to new cases of disease over at-risk population times 100. And the answer is usually expressed in percentage. So for calculation of the attack rate among men, we already recorded that the new cases of tuberculosis among men to be 150 cases. And the total population of men, not the total population of women now. We are looking at attack rate of tuberculosis among men. That the total population of men is 5,000. So, and that total population of men is known as at-risk population, since all men are considered to be at risk of tuberculosis in that community. So therefore, putting in the figure or substituting in the formula, we have 150 over 5,000 times 1,000. Sorry, times 100. The 100 helps us to have an idea. So by the time you were able to cancel out, you are going to have 3%. And that 3% is the attack rate of tuberculosis among men in that community. Then for women, the new cases we recorded was 100. And the at-risk population of the women were 5,000. So the attack rate would be the new cases over total population exposed times 100, That will give us 2%. So therefore, 2% of the attack rate among women is 2%. So already 2% of the population of women in that community has already been attacked, whereas 3% of men has already been attacked by that disease. Then incidence rate. That is the B part of the question. The incidence rate measures the frequency of new cases of a disease in a defined population during a specific period. The only difference here is that we are using 1,000 for comparison's sake. And the formula is incidence rate equals new cases of disease over at-risk population times 1,000. Unlike attack rates, we are having times 100. So for this particular hypothetical example, the men we already know had 50 new cases of tuberculosis. So therefore, we substitute in the formula, and we have 150 over 5,000 times 1,000. And the answer we got was 30 cases per 1,000 men. So with this, we can say we already have 30 cases of tuberculosis per 1,000 men. So since we already have 5,000, so by this, per 1,000 men, 30 of them have tuberculosis. So that is how to calculate incidence rate. For women, we already have 100 cases. So we substitute in the formula. We don't know the formula for incidence rate equals to new cases of a population exposed or susceptible population times 1,000. We cancel out, we are going to have 20 cases per 1,000 women. Prevalence. Prevalence, we already know, is the total number of cases, such as new and old cases, or also call it existing cases. And the formula for calculating prevalence rate is total cases, that is both new and old, over total population exposed times 1,000. So therefore, for men, the total case already recorded, we already have 150 as the new cases. And the existing cases or the old cases was 50 cases of tuberculosis. So when we add them up together, it gives us 200 cases of tuberculosis in total. That is both old and new. But in incidence, we're only concerned with what? New cases. So when we add them up, we have 200 cases of tuberculosis. And the total population of men exposed was 5,000. So 200 divided by 5,000 times 1,000 for purpose of reference. So we'll be having 40 cases of tuberculosis per 1,000 men. The same way, for calculation of prevalence rate among women, in that hypothetical example, the total cases of tuberculosis among the women, both old and new, was 130, because the new cases were 100 and the old cases were 30. And the total population exposed, 5,000. So 130 over population exposed times 1,000. When you cancel out, you will have 26 cases per 1,000 women. Now, let's calculate the next, which is ratio of tuberculosis cases in men to women. The ratio of tuberculosis cases in men to women is simply the number of tuberculosis cases in men divided by the number of tuberculosis in women. And by the time you cancel out, we'll be having 1:1.54. We have 1:1. So by the time we cancel out, cancel this one, we'll end up having when we cancel out, we'll have 1 here. When we cancel out this one, we'll have 1.54. So if you can approximate, you should be giving it 2. So we will now end up with 1 is to 1.54. So that would be the ratio. 1 is to 1.54. 1.54, sorry. So this means that for every 1 TB case among women, there are approximately 1.54 TB cases among men. So the final answer would now be, to every 1 case, that is, to every 1 case of TB among women, there is 1.54 or approximately 2 cases of tuberculosis among men. Now let's look at the last question. Let's look at the last question. Now, it says, we want to calculate the proportion of tuberculosis cases in men. This refers to the proportion of total tuberculosis cases that occur in men. Remember, we are having tuberculosis cases both in men and in women who are part of the general population. Now, our concern is we want to know among the total tuberculosis cases in that population of 10,000 people, where men is 5,000, women is 5,000. Our interest is among the total cases of tuberculosis. We know that in men, the total tuberculosis is 200, 150 being new cases, 50 being old cases. Then among women, total tuberculosis was 130, with 100 being new cases and 30 being old cases. So the total tuberculosis cases equals to 200 from men and 130 from women. So the total tuberculosis cases in that community of 10,000 people was 330. So, but we want to find a proportion from that 330 that is of men. We want to find among that 330 cases of tuberculosis among these people, how many percent is of men. So therefore, that will give us the formula of total cases in men over total cases in men plus total cases in women. That is the total cases of tuberculosis in that community. So substituting a formula, the total case of tuberculosis in men was 200, and the total cases of tuberculosis is 330. By the time we cancel out, we are going to have 0.606, or approximately 60%. Because you are going to multiply by 100. That will give us the percentage, because the proportion, that will give us the percentage of what is total tuberculosis men, or total men who have tuberculosis in that community, the percentage, which is 60%, meaning that men has higher percent of people who has tuberculosis compared to the women. So this is how you calculate this proportion, ratio, incidence rate, prevalence rate, and attack rate. In the next lecture or section, we shall look at the other part, which is discussing on the descriptive, which has to do with what we saw. At the end of the findings, we'll find that 60% of the men have tuberculosis. That is the descriptive analysis in that community at 60%. Then analytical, we try to compare what we found with other trends. So in the next section, we shall look at them. Thank you very much.